All right, good morning, everybody. Uh, Okay, so today we are doing question 25 from the Young Baptist Catechism. We've already talked about many times before. The Young Baptist Catechism is available on Kindle. Last I checked, for $2.99. It's available for $7.99 as a paperback. It's very good because not only does it have the questions and the answers, but it doesn't just list the verses. It actually quotes them so you can actually read them to it. And it's actually designed for teenagers and children to explain a lot of these issues. Today we're dealing with question 25, and so I'll begin by reading it now. It says, what does the Bible say God made on the seventh day? Answer: on the seventh day, God rested from his work. Genesis 2, 1 and 2. Thus, the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. By the seventh day, God completed his work, which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work, which he has done. I have it quoted there twice. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we have the quotation indicating that God creates the earth, the heavens and the earth, in 6 days. However, I wanted to make sure that I had this. I was going to have this listed on the screen, but unfortunately, I don't have it there. But basically, there are three basic views about the days of creation. One is the view that is held by people like Deacon Brother Eric Ramirez and Brother James Aleman, which is a 24-hour view, namely that the 7 days of creation are each 24-hour days. So it says these are 7 24-hour days of one Earth week, about 6,000 years ago. Some people go as far as going as late as about 20-something thousand years. I don't think a young Earth creationism goes any further than that, right? Okay, so they don't go any further than about 20-something thousand years old. And the other is the view very commonly known as the day-age view. The days are in chronological order, each representing a period of time and unspecified length. So in other words, that the days of creation, according to the day-age view, represent long periods of time which could represent billions of years rather than 24-hour days. The third view is called the framework view. The days exhibit a logical order rather than a chronological order. In other words, it's not explaining the length of the days, whether they be 24-hour days or billions of years or anything like that, but basically it is a description of what God did in logical and chronological order. This is the day-age view. So I want to explain basically the two different interpretations that are usually given, namely regarding the seventh day, which is what this Sunday school is about today. The two view of the 7 days is that it was a 24-hour day. That's the young Earth view. But the second view is that we are still today in God's Sabbath rest. This is a quotation from John Lennox, 7 Days That Divide the World, page 50, Old Earth view. So the idea here with the Old Earth view is that we are currently in the seventh day because God is no longer actively creating as he had in the billions of years that it is understood that the universe was created. So that's the Old Earth view that is being, here at Acts Reformed Church, we do not, it's not an issue of dogma, whether you hold to the earth being 6,000 years or 20,000 years, or if you believe that the earth is 4 billion years or that the universe is 13.7 billion years. The cosmology, the scientific cosmology, the consensus is that the universe is about 13.7 to 13.7.8 or something like that billion years old versus the young Earth view. So we allow for both perspectives to exist, and it's a very good study to get into because if you get into the issue of apologetics, in apologetics, these kinds of questions are going to come up. Yes, sir.
What view do you hold?
I was raised with the old Earth view, listening to people like Dr. Hugh Ross. Young Earth view is relatively new to me, and given some of the questions that I have, there are questions. I remember when we were doing a Bible study with a family at the previous church I was attending. Brother Eric was one of the ones that was there. We had a couple of representatives from Dr. Hugh Ross's ministry, Reasons to Believe. And what I did was, as I was studying material from Young Earth perspective, I was trying to grill them as much as I could. And I think Brother Eric will agree with that, that I tried to grill them as much as possible with all of the young earth arguments that I could muster. And some of their answers I thought were very good, but some of the questions that I do have regarding the old earth view that the old earth view still has not answered to my satisfaction is the issue of the paintings, because in old earth cosmology, they believe that the dinosaurs died because of an asteroid impact that hit the Earth 65 million years ago that wiped out all the dinosaurs, and then after that, probably about 100,000 years ago or whatever I'm not actually quite clear where they date Adam, but then after that, God creates Adam and Eve and so forth, and so what this means is that mankind never saw the dinosaurs. We never lived to see them. However, what young earth creationists such as Ken Ham and others, Brother James will vouch for this, and so does Brother Eric, that there is evidence that they have uncovered that man did see the dinosaurs. Now, I'm not saying that I believe it. I'm just saying that this is an issue because they have paintings and pottery. They have stories and legends of dragons that you find in places like Asia and stuff like that. And a lot of these depictions somewhat resemble what we call dinosaurs. So these are the kinds of questions that I have. So I'm on the fence to answer your question. But brother?
I just want to make a comment, though.
Yeah.
So one of the things about Johnny is that you actually directly asked him about something, remember?
Yes, I did.
Ross, remember his answer was, because what we were talking about is that when you look at, for instance, in Peru, they have pottery that depicts what very much looks like dinosaurs, and it shows it with scaly skin.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the original drawings and perceptions of dinosaurs, they did not portray them with scaly skin, but with soft skin, right? And so one of the things that we're asking is, how is it that this ancient civilization would have been able to not only depict this, but even get down to the detail? And his answer was, oh, they were just very creative. He said that we don't believe that this is because they actually saw it. And we thought that was rather common. Right?
Yes, the older view tends to be. Look, maybe there is an answer out there. I know that Michael Heiser deals with these kinds of questions, and he says that some of the young earth arguments are not very good, and Michael Heiser is entitled to his opinion. Maybe the old earthers have a good answer. I just haven't heard it. I've heard them being very dismissive about this. And there's even a book, I don't think I brought it with me, but there's a book where they have some sort of I think I showed it to Brother Eric or Brother James, and I showed it to Pastor Gerardo, because Pastor Gerardo is an old earther himself. And there was a what do you call it? Those where they have the footprints or something like that.
Yeah, not the fossil, right?
Not fossil, but it's like where they find footprints. Well, anyway,
footprints of humans with dinosaur footprints.
Exactly. So there was a picture that I saw in a book where it says that you have dinosaur footprint and a human footprint side by side, and that they're dated to the same time period. And so, what about that? And so, my concern with the old Earth view is that I haven't seen them systematically address those. If they have, I just personally haven't seen it. I'm not saying that this is a focal point of my studies, because I got my other responsibilities as well. But so I was raised old Earth. I still lean old Earth because of the issue of starlight and other issues, because one of the arguments that young Earthers have made is that God made the universe to look old. So in a way, they're admitting that God has made that the universe looks old. But then you have young Earthers who say, no, actually, there's evidence that the universe is young. So you have these arguments going back and forth. So I'm on the fence, but if you're asking me where I lean, I will lean slightly to the old Earth, but I'm willing to be swayed. Yes, brother.
Is there any upside or downside for holding view? Is it relevant? I mean, is there an importance of even view?
Well, I mean, it affects your view of cosmology, and it does have apologetic value. So if the young Earth view is wrong, it's causing a lot of people to stumble when they go to college and they're hearing from the universities about science and the Big Bang and all of that stuff. And so a lot of people who were raised in Christian homes taught young Earth creationism. They go to school and they lose their faith. And if young Earth creationism is wrong, they have to be held responsible for that. However, if the old Earth view is wrong, then we need to educate kids on having a Christian biblical worldview, rather than letting secular science dictate how we're going to interpret cosmology. So it is important for apologetic purposes. Yes, sir.
Also, in witnessing the atheists, I've had them be very dismissive of the Bible, Christianity, and everything else, because they said, this proves, carbon dating proves that this is a lie. I'm not gonna have any part of it. And that's what they use as their dismissive rejection of Christianity and God.
Yes, that's right. Because when you're looking at secularism, and I'm trying to look at the time here, when you're looking at secularism, there's a spiritual, I usually, because Romans chapter 1, and I don't have it listed here, but Romans chapter 1 says that man suppresses the truth in unrighteousness. And the way I like to say it in basic everyday English is that the unbeliever is in spiritual denial of the revelation of God. And so secularism, which is the biggest enemy right now to Christianity and to the freedom of religion in general, but it's just the idea of faith, is that they're trying to come up with any explanation that excludes God. And so when you remove God from the equation, and when I say God, I mean Yahweh, the Christian God, and you start with man as the measure of all things, that means that man determines what's right and wrong. So how do you know what morality is? Well, man decides what morality is. Well, where did the universe come from? Well, man decides that once we get more knowledge of science. And so when you start with man, you end with man, and you don't. No one can judge you. One of the things about Christianity is that in our faith, we believe that there is a day of judgment and a resurrection of the dead. And that on that day of judgment, we're going to give an account for everything we did under the flesh. Atheists don't like that. I believe that this doctrine of the final judgment is the reason why they are looking for any excuse to say, not the Christian God. Organized religion is wrong. Organized religion is the biggest cause of war, which is actually not true. They develop all these myths about religion and Christianity and things like that in order to use as an excuse and to hit Christians and people in religion in general, but Christians over the head with their myths and their excuses, basically, to justify their spiritual denial. So I just wanted to end that point there and get to the meaning of the word. Does anyone have any more questions? Or okay.
Just that the Bible points out that he makes their wisdom into foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
When you look at the scriptures, the idea that the earth is round instead of flat,
mm-hmm.
You see that in the scriptures. But for the longest time, up until the 1600s, they thought the earth was flat. You know what I mean?
Well, it's actually a myth, though. That is a myth. That it's already been discovered that from the ancient world, you had people like Aristotle, and I don't remember the names of the people. I would recommend you read a book called Galileo Goes to Jail. It gets a discussion because a lot of people have this myth that Christopher Columbus, when he was coming to the Americas, he thought he was going to India, that everybody thought the earth was flat and that he was trying to prove his theory that the earth was round. Actually, that was never even in discussion. All of the intellectuals of the time knew that the earth was round because of the reason of the moon. Because when there's
going back further, even the maps at that time had water flowing over the edge of the cliff that would fall along the ships,
Some maybe. I mean, it's not.
And then, there's other things too, like circulation of blood in the body, and different things that the Bible tells us that are true, and it makes the scientists at the time look foolish.
Right. Alan, I think you were first.
Right, but even if you're saying it's true, Johnny, it proves the point that that Brad is saying is that, in essence, you can't really believe secular science or truth because we're being taught in even school, in fact, what Brad just said. Mm-hmm. But now you're saying something different, so it proves the actual point what Brad was trying to make is that the things we're being taught in secularism changes literally by seasons. I didn't learn about that Pluto wasn't a planet until my son told me. When he taught, we were taught whatever, 8 years ago.
Neil deGrasse Tyson's the one that.
So one of them we're taught, in junior high, whatever, elementary, high school, hey, Pluto's a planet, and I come find out, from my son in his school, that it's no longer a planet. So I don't know what to believe in. taught science?
Well, because we are talking about astrophysics. We're talking about science. See, science is basically the study of how the universe works. Okay, and I maintain that the Bible is not here to tell us how the universe works. The Bible, as a revelation from God, is here to tell us why the universe works. And the universe works, the reason is to glorify God. And so we can infer certain scientific, I mean, the very basis of science is that the universe has order. And because the universe has order, you can predict what's going to happen based on scientific observation. So based on the purpose that God had, in other words, to create the universe with order. In fact, the word cosmos, which is translated into English as world, in the Greek, it means order. So the universe, it has order, and because it has order, we can study how things are. If you hold something up in the air and you let it go, it'll fall to the ground. Why? Because we see that we observe the law of gravity, that everything comes down. We do that. We know that because God created the universe that way. Science can only explain how that works, but they can't explain why that works. Brother Eric, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just want to make clarification. Actually, brother, you are correct that the majority of the public did have that view. What happens is that the ones who actually held the view that it was round was actually the philosophers. And so one of the things that we have to consider is that this is, for instance, on our last podcast, we talked about the effects of the Reformation. The Reformation had a tremendous effect on education. Why? Because the dominating church, which was, the Roman Church, did not want people to read the Bible for themselves because they didn't want them to mature. Right? Mm-hmm. So that means that the people had to depend on the priest to tell them what the Bible said. So one of the things that was a result of that is that you had a lot of superstition, right? Mm-hmm. So when the Reformation happened, it basically made the public realize, okay, in order for us to really understand God, we have to be able to read His Word. So how are you going to be able to read His Word? Mm-hmm. By being able to be educated to do that. So what happens is that the idea of the earth being round, it was known before, but not all of the public viewers. And that's why.
Well, that's why I said among the intellectuals, because one of the phenomenons was the lunar eclipse.
Yeah. Totally wrong, like Darwin saying that it came from apes.
Yeah, the hominids. Yeah.
You still haven't found the missing link.
Right.
There's no linkage there.
Right.
Yes, it's wrong. They say, oh well, just life spontaneously happened. Mm-hmm. Oh really? Well, have you been able to create it in the laboratory?
Mm-hmm. Right.
No, they haven't been able to do it.
Exactly.
Even though they claim that that's what happened, and they claim that this is something that scientifically is without dispute. Well, it is.
Brother,
they've never done it.
Brother, if they were to make it, they would already be in the house because it took them to design to do it.
Exactly. All right. Well, anyway, so just to wrap up the issue of the days of creation and science. So one of the observations that's made by old earthers is that when the seventh day concludes, it does not say the evening and the morning or the seventh day. It's only mentioned for the first 6 days. And so for them, and I was reading the Expositor's Bible commentary, and it doesn't say it's the age, but I'm not sure what the author's view was, but he did say that because the phrase evening and morning were the seventh day, he says that this is a picture of the eternal Sabbath of rest in the hereafter. So this view of that is significant. Now, I actually spoke with Brother James, and I think he told me that he believes that the omission of the phrase evening and the morning were the seventh day is an elliptical statement, that Moses didn't have to say evening and the morning was the seventh day because he had already said it for the first 6 days. I mean, it's still, why did Moses take the time to say evening and morning for every one of the 6 days, but the seventh day he doesn't? I think is an open question. I think it's at least something that should be considered. So what I wanted to get to was the root meaning of the word is to cease or desist, because what it says is that he rested, which is the word Shabbat, and it means to cease or desist, and it's usually understood as a day of rest. And so on the day of rest, on the seventh day, he rested, he blessed it, and then he hallowed it. So it makes it a very important bit. He goes out of his way to tell us that the seventh day had rest, blessed, and hallowed. So he made the day holy. And so when we're looking at the Sabbath day, it is alluded to on the day as the day of rest in Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant or your livestock or your sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, a lot of people think that the word Sabbath means seventh. It actually means to cease, desist, or to rest. Then I wanted to cover one of the things, because one of the issues that I like to point out to people is that when we get to Mount Sinai with Moses, and this will probably be covered once we get to the Decalogue. The Decalogue, if anyone doesn't know, is the word that is used to describe the Ten Commandments. So we can probably explore this a little more fully. But one of the things that I like to point out is that on the days of creation, whatever length you want to believe it is, we see that the seventh day is a day of rest, and this point is what is used by God for the Mosaic covenant to establish this for the Jewish people. Now, the Jewish people had a specific kind of covenant, the nation of Israel. It was national. It had borders. There was land. It was theocratic, namely that the law of God was enforced on all of the people. In other words, you didn't have freedom of religion the way we have in our country today, because we live in a republic. So it was national, and it was theocratic, it was earthly, etc. The new covenant, of course, is not that way. And so what we have is the concept of a day of rest, because we work and work and work 6 days a week. Some of us work 5 days. I work 6, but we will work 6 days, but we need to have that day of rest. It's a principle. Now, some people have taken it as a day of, well, I can do anything I want, and why even go to church? Others have taken it as, I can't do anything because I need to do anything God. I can't throw a frisbee with my son, or I can't go to the movies. And some people get very restrictive as to what they think is allowable on the day of rest, the Sabbath. So I wanted to quote here from Mark chapter 2, verse 23 through 28. One Sabbath he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck herds of grain, and the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing that what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and also the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." Now, I don't want to focus on the issues regarding Jesus' lordship. That's for a different Sunday school. But what I wanted to focus on is that Jesus here is explaining that the purpose of the day of rest, even though it is to kind of think back to the seventh day when God rested from the creation, but he's also saying that it was made to benefit man. It was not made to enslave man. So there's a story in the Gospel of John, I didn't include it in my notes, where Jesus heals a man on the day of rest. And so you'd think when a person is healed from a horrible illness, that people would say, "Praise the Lord! Such and such person who has been ill from this condition for all these years, or perhaps even from his birth, has now been healed." But the Jewish leaders, instead of praising God for the miracle, they would say, "What day is it? Hey, this is the wrong day. I mean, if it would have been yesterday, it'd be fine. Tomorrow, yes, not today. Today, that's wrong. So you must be doing it from the power of Beelzebub," right? So this is one of those things where we gotta think. That's why Jesus even asks in one of the passages, is it lawful to do good or evil on the Sabbath? And the last verse I wanted to quote from is this is Romans chapter 14, verses 5 through 6. "One person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats, eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while the one who abstains, abstains in honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. So the principle is to have a day of rest, but it is not to limit man, it is to free man to honor God. Now, people have different convictions. Some people decide, well, whether you're a Seventh-day Adventist or a Seventh-day Baptist or just a really restrictive Sabbatarian within the Reformed Baptist communion or maybe a Presbyterian communion, which they do exist in those types of communions, where they say, I can't do anything on Sunday from sunrise to sunset, overlapping between Saturday and Sunday or whatever the case may be. And these people tend to look at this and they say, in order for me to eat on Sunday, I have to prepare my meal on Saturday. Or if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you can't make a meal on Saturday, so you have to prepare it on Friday. These are the kinds of things that Paul is specifically saying. We do not try to impose our personal convictions or personal preferences on how one is to behave on the Lord's Day or the Sabbath, the day of rest. So I don't know if anyone has any questions as we close this study.
Well, and specifically, Christ points out their hypocrisy. He says, well, if your donkey falls in a hole on the Sabbath,
yes,
you're going to pull it out.
That's right. That's right.
These are
Mm-hmm.
my children. Am I not going to help them just because it's the Sabbath?
Is it interesting? I was listening to a pastor preach a sermon about the Sabbath, and he was making the comment that people will say, well, what about the whole thing about the animal falling in the ditch or something like that? Are you not going to free him? And he says, yes, I understand that completely. But if you're letting him fall in the ditch every Sabbath, you're not doing a very good job. And the principle is, of course, that people tend to let certain things get in the way. So I thought it was a funny little story that he gave. But the issue is just basically that the day of rest, the day of ceasing and desisting is a personal conviction. We want to honor God. We want to love Him. That's why we congregate together. Obviously, from the New Covenant perspective, not New Covenant theology, but in Covenant theology, in the perspective of the New Covenant, we actually believe that Jesus, because He rose from the dead on Sunday, that the Sunday became the day of gathering for Christians, and so that becomes our New Covenant Sabbath. Yes, brother.
Yeah, I just want to add a quote from Matthew Henry when he was commentating on this passage that I think gives light into what this is about. And it's ritual observances must give way to moral obligations, and that may be done in a case of necessity, which otherwise may not be done. So in other words, the moral obligation of good, of doing what is right, supersedes that ritual observance that they had on the Sabbath. So by no means do we say on the Sabbath or on the Lord's Day, if you want to take the Christian Sabbath, you are not to do this, you are not to do that. There are specific reasons for it. And one of them is for rest from your job, and another one is to worship the Lord. And one of the things about doing good on the Christian Sabbath is spending time with your family.
Amen.
Your spiritual family and your physical family. So by no means are we trying to enslave anybody by saying you should not work. You shouldn't work on a Sunday, and there's going to be some people that unfortunately have to.
Mm-hmm.
And we would pray and hope that they could figure out a way so that they could congregate on Sundays. But by no means are we saying, well, you're not a Christian because you're working on Sunday.
Right. I mean, I actually knew a guy at the previous church. I'll get to you, brother. Where he was asking the same question. I had met him 1 year, and then years would go by, and throughout the course of those years, periodically, he would ask you about what your view was of the Sabbath. In other words, he would go and eat with you at a restaurant on Sunday, and then talk to you about his conviction about how it was a sin to go out and eat at a restaurant on Sunday. So he's having the conversation with you on the Sabbath about how we shouldn't be eating while having a meal with you at a restaurant. So and the funny thing about it is that he would have this conversation over and over again for years and years and years, and it was kind of frustrating. I was like, dude, we had this conversation like 5 years ago. Why are we still talking about this? And you're raising the same points over and over again. So, brother?
Commenting on that, you said Lord rebuke you.
All right.
No, but I wanted to make the point that actually the Sabbath is actually a great way to also look at the principle that the Lord said of building your your treasures in heaven.
Mhm.
Why? Because you have 6 days to work on your business or to make money, right? So God is giving you 1 day, in essence, to stop from that, to be able to give a day unto Him. So that's why I think there's a good principle in that, in that you don't work on Sunday. You have 6 other days to do it.
Yes.
Right? It's a day that we are giving unto the Lord, a time.
Right.
I see it more as an issue of time, a time that is given.
Right. But also I was saying that it's but also the thing that I was saying is that, remember when we were talking a moment ago, when we were talking about the age of the earth, I was saying that the Bible expresses these things teleologically. It's the purpose, the why God does this is what the Bible gets into. And in Mark chapter 2, verse 28, he says to them, the Sabbath was made for man. So the purpose of the Sabbath, this is the teleology, the purpose and design of the Sabbath is to benefit man, not to enslave them. So I'll conclude the study with that. And Heavenly Father, thank you for the time that we have together, that we're able to discuss these issues, and hope that it was beneficial. I know I enjoyed the study and the research that was done, and we just hope that you bless as people ask more questions, as they study these issues, because it actually helps them grow, and we want to do this in order to glorify you, not only individually, but collectively. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, amen.